So in today's video, we're going to talk about how to raise emotionally intelligent boys and girls too. And it's so enlightening because I came across this video of Michelle Obama's YouTube channel with her brother, and she had past President Barack Obama on there talking about how much difficulties their daughters are having finding emotionally intelligent guys today. Sasha Obama went out on a date, either her or Maya, and the guy was looking for her to split the bill. And this is the common thing out there now.
I do want to talk to Emma as a mother, because she's a mother trying to figure this out. And I do think there's a question, like the original question of why do we love our sons and raise our daughters? And I think that's something worth sort of talking through among mothers, because sadly, many mothers are parenting alone, which is a huge problem. I think Scott Galloway, there are other researchers out there who say that one of the challenges that boys face is that there just aren't enough men in their lives. You know, the men have disappeared, whether through divorce or fatherhood. There are small numbers of male teachers in high schools. Boys are growing up in an education system where they're mostly surrounded by women.
Right.
Barack, you've talked about the fact that the entire education system isn't even designed to recognize boys and what they need. So, what do we say to Emma? Because again, we don't know whether she's parenting alone or whether she has a husband. But I do think that mothers struggle to figure out what do their sons need. And so they wind up operating out of their own fears and their own instincts, which is to love unconditionally. I think mom was like this. She raised me to be tough because I think she knew what it was like to be a woman. In her mind, she knew what she was preparing me for. The insults, the limitations, the whatever you
The
can think
sexism,
of,
the biases.
sexism, the biases. So she knew you have to have a mouth. You have to be able to speak up
Right.
for yourself. With you, she wanted you to be nice so that you wouldn't get in trouble or you
Right.
wouldn't get arrested. But was that who you were? So what do we say to the Emmas of the world? How do we sort of start thinking as a society about helping mothers?
Right.
Raise sons, because they're
Right.
doing it alone, and we're being told that we don't have what it takes to give boys all of what they need.
Well, look, I think you started hinting at it. As somebody who was raised by a single mom, not perfectly, but that unconditional love as a start is the right one.
Mm-hmm.
I do think, though, thinking about raising boys in the same way you're thinking about raising daughters, which is how do you make them good, responsible people who know how to function and know how to understand themselves well enough that they can navigate this really complicated world and setting high expectations. So there are a lot of these things that apply to boys and girls. I do think that there are some particular issues with boys that as a society we're not addressing. I do think as a society we have to create more structures for boys and men to have guidance, rituals, frameworks, encouragement, to be able to meet a wide range of role models so that whatever their inclinations, they can see a path to success that isn't just sports or money, making a lot of money. And so that's on all of us together. What I would say to Emma would be, in your community, even if you have a wonderful male partner who's in the house, I think it still would be good to find assets in the community, people in the community, friends in your community, places of worship, community organizations, what have you, where there are a bunch of men who can be sort of elders to boys. And so they're not just looking at one particular role model, but many. And one of the things when Michelle and I first started dating, and I'd go over to your guys' house, one of the things I loved was just, seeing all your uncles and your cousins. And there were a bunch of different kinds of men. There were men that were kind of soft-spoken, and then there were men that were loud, and there were men who were engineers, and then there were men who were
police officers,
or they drove a jitney cab.
Yep.
Right? And that's one of the things that I think a lot of times boys need is not just exposure to one guy.
One dad.
No matter how good the dad
is. He can't be everything.
He can't be everything. And that boy may need somebody to give the boy some perspective on the dad.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
One of the most valuable things I learned as a guy was I had a gay professor in college at a time when openly gay folks still weren't out of line, who became one of my favorite professors and was a great guy and would call me out when I started saying stuff that was ignorant. You need that to show empathy and kindness. And by the way, you need that person in your friend group so that if you then have a boy who's gay or non-binary or what have you, they have somebody that they can go, okay, I'm not alone in this.
Yeah.
Right. So that I think is creating that community. I know it's corny, but that's what they need.
What kind of boys, young men, and men are we raising? And this goes back to the home life. What are we instilling in the minds of our young boys, of our boys and our young men? It's so crucial to what is showing up now in the dating scene, in marriages, in relationships. These men are not being shown the importance of naming their emotions. And not to get me on the topic of it's so important to raise children in two parents household, but if the parents are not themselves emotionally present, emotionally intelligent, and raising these boys and girls too, but this particular video is on boys, young men, and men in general, but I try to weigh both sides of the genders, and more solution focus is what my channel is about. It's not to bash men, but to bring to light what is common in society these days, the misogyny, the red medicine community, the entitlement mentality, the fact that boys think because they have thing between their legs, they're entitled to women's bodies, to 50-50, even though they're still not willing to do the labor of being in community, in the home, being a team in the home. How are we handling the cooking, the cleaning, the washing the kids, getting them to bed, taking them to the extracurricular activities, doctor's appointments, school stuff, all the stuff. Is it just working, coming home and chilling on the couch or going to the man's cave? But this is where what you're doing currently with your boys, with your young man, is going to make this man different from what it looks like right now. And I don't want to hear about the dating pool is speeding. There's really seriously great guys out there, but you just got to be willing to look and continue to look and cut your losses in one relationship if it's not going the way you want your alignment to be with a particular person. And that willingness makes a difference. So you're not drawing in or making babies with someone who might rather, instead of building with you, might rather want to tear you down or insist on 50-50 when they're not doing any part of building up the relationship, and everything is super circular. You're just running around and never making any forward moving momentum in the relationship, your life, and your legacy building. So one of the things that Barack Obama said, which I love so much, and I've been saying pieces of that in my channel a lot of times, is finding community, even when you're in a two-parent household, because two-parent household doesn't always equate to someone being emotionally intelligent or a good person in life overall. Look at the guy, the Idaho guy who slain those beautiful four souls. He was from a two-parent home. He was a heroin addict. Yes, he went back to school working on his PhD, but he's fucked up. What was he exposed to? What were some of the, things that he was taught at home by his father, or models to him? It's all about modeling. So even if you have a two-parent household, a single mother for household, good for that boy to have other mentors in his life, coaches, mentors, therapists. So rallying all that around that boy will have him get perspective from different angles, not from just red pillars or misogynistic mindset that maybe his dad has. Uncles can always be not blood related, and it's okay. Fathers can be pastors in his life, mentors, coaches, but you have to be intentional as a mother or as a father. It's not a lot of fathers who are doing this, by the way, but this is why we're having these discussions, right? To really bring in all those diverse people into diverse and safe. Safe, I cannot stress enough about safe, because boys get SA too, and this is what perpetuates into different behaviors. Anger, being essayed by maybe an older woman, cannot translate to some of these men having low self-esteem, insecure, and they take their anger out on women that they're meeting along the way in their life. That's the psychology of that. And I see this day to day. You don't know who I am. I'm midway through my recording here. Gina Chubesi here, your favorite psychiatrist, expression, where I talk about everything mental health. Should I go? Should I stay? To minimize that, help you realize you're being with the dusty, get out, heal, and continue to elevate. You can only get out and leave when you're ready to. So all these things to teach you, and when you're ready to move, ready to leave, you can leave and leave safely. But I digress. So finding that community, ongoing support and community, being in touch with your boys, teaching them about emotion or just anger. Clear, stable influences, clear, safe, and stable influences in their lives, so they have that outlet. They have that outlook, that perspective, and that outlet is so crucial. Having consistency and structure. 3, consistency and structure. Having consistency and structure. Girls need it too, but more so boys need consistency in their primary caregivers. Consistency in love. Like for Obama, he mentioned how his mom was so young. He was a teenager when she had him and got remarried. But the fact is, his grandparents were the one he said he was loved. And consistent presence of those grandparents made him who he is today, and exposing him to different things, taking him to the museum, traveling, things like that. I'm going to come back and do part 2. Let me know your thoughts and opinion on raising emotionally safe, emotionally intelligent young men.
And we talk a lot about what we had with our mother and father, right? And a lot of times, but we really did have a big community of people in our lives. Right. I mean, that we don't talk a lot about that on this show. We allude to it, but Craig and I, we grew up in a huge community of extended aunts and uncles and cousins and all types of male role models, which helped in broadening out and filling in where our mother and father were limited.
So for Emma, I'm picking up a couple of things. Community, big,
huge,
not just
a single mom and dad.
or mom and dad, but a broad community. And I can appreciate you using our family as an example, but uncles, but not necessarily blood
It doesn't
uncles,
have to be blood.
but men who can who can give a kid or kids some contextualization of who their parents are.
Right. And
That's,
also,
and what it means,
and can model. Yeah. There are a lot of ways to be a responsible, respected, strong man. And you don't have to be rich, and you don't have to be a professional athlete.
And you don't have to go find it on the internet among a group of unclear influences, and this is a thing that parents, Emma has to understand, if her sons aren't getting it,
they'll look for it
they are going
someplace
to
else.
look for it because boys need this.
Right.
Whether they think that they're happy playing video games on their own, and we haven't even talked about how the rise in video games has sort of left kids feeling like, well, this is who I am. I'm alone, or I'm interacting through a game virtually, but I don't have any in real life friends. Kids are going to seek out some kind of community. So big community, I would emphasize, because they need to have other outlets. They have to be able to learn how to be more than just the sport that they care about. Right. And while they get great skills in sports and they learn a whole lot of traits,
teamwork.
It isn't music. It's not language. It's not social in certain ways.
Right.
And so I think we owe it to our boys to be very deliberate about saying enough with sports and let's try some other things.
Or at least encouraging them and exposing them to it in a way. Look, sports was scaffolding for me to pull myself into manhood. But even as I was doing that, though, my mom was still dragging me to art museums.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I was still being taken to, waiting for Godot. I remember my mom took me to a Samuel Beckett play when I was like 12. And I'm kind of sitting there.
It's like, what is this about?
But you know what? I kind of got it after a while. I thought, that's interesting. I mean, it wasn't necessarily the thing I would choose to do, but the fact that I did it meant later when I was 17, 18, all right, there's something there that, may be interesting. So sometimes it's just a matter of, saying to our boys, you being interested in art and you being interested in, theater, that's cool.
I would also,
boys hearing that. Yeah, that's cool.
Those are good things. So that, and I would tell Emma, don't assume who your son is going to be based on some male stereotypes of what you think he should be.
Right.
Really pay attention to who he's showing you he is.
Right. So we're giving Emma those two things, the community and the diversity in sports. But I want to go back to a third thing that you brought up early on, is we have to help them be self-aware of their own internal feelings. Is that how you...
Yeah,
rather than, when we're talking about all the traits who are all external, that's one. I like that one. I like that one for Emma. I like that one for Emma.
Okay, yeah. I'm glad you like that one.
Yeah. Well, and Michelle's right that I think girls, it comes more organically to them in their social groups. But the way I describe it, and I talked to Malia and Sasha about this, is figuring out how to have a good conversation with yourself, and being open and kind to yourself, and figuring out, all right, I'm not feeling great here, and what's going on, and how can I share this, and how can I talk about it? I mean, I think that's something you want to teach all kids.
But that takes time.
But that takes, and it takes some practice and encouragement.
And I would say to Emma and all parents, period, of sons, that it requires some slowing down on the part of the parent, because that stuff, that's not science. That's art. That you can't schedule that. Right. It's not a formula. You have to create space.
Right. And it's not always efficient.
And it's not efficient. It will never be efficient because kids, they don't open up on time. They're not always going to have a feeling at dinner time when you're ready. Yeah. So you have to create enough space, enough downtime throughout the course of a week, a month, to give kids that space to let things unfold, to let them unfold for you. And I think parents of sons have to understand that sons need unfolding in that emotional way as much as their daughters do.
Well, it turns out, some of these studies are showing they may need it more.
They may need it even more.
Maybe because they're not getting it reinforced in the outside world.
Anywhere else.
It does mean, though, that as men, we have to, in whatever conversations we're having with boys, sending the signal that emotional intelligence, paying attention to how other people are feeling, and also paying attention to how you are feeling, and being able to describe that and work through those things, that is a characteristic of being a grown man. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's worthwhile.
And that means that men have to practice that too.
Yeah.
And that's also a message for the fathers out there, among many things of we need more men present. That's something that studies are showing. Right. Men are not present in the lives of children. And that has is having a disproportionate impact on boys. Right. But men have to do the self-work too. Right. Fathers, men in general, because if you're of a certain generation, we just saw it here. You guys weren't taught that. Yeah. You weren't taught how to, Barack, you read about it. You were unusual in your pursuit of it, maybe because it's the way you were raised, but a lot of men aren't aware that their ability to unpack themselves and the need to do that work is going to directly impact young boys in the world, period.
Yeah. I think you are absolutely right. I at the danger of sounding like the policy guy here, I do want to just go back to something I said earlier. Everything you said is right, and that's work men have to do. I think it's important not to divorce that work from some other stuff like men having jobs.
I totally agree. Totally agree. It was not an either or at all.
Exactly. But because part of what happened when we say there aren't a lot of men around.
Yes.
Part of what happened, and it happened in the Black community first,
and now it's trickling out.
Now you're seeing it happening across the board, was a lot of male identity and status was tied up with being a provider, having a job, doing a good job, coming home. And when folks started losing jobs because of deindustrialization and offshoring, and, obviously this isn't a political show, so we're not going to go down all the reasons that it happened, but it happened. And so then you had a bunch of men suddenly feeling lost because their identity had been so wrapped up in that one thing, which was being a provider. And so part of what we have to do is, as men take responsibility for figuring out how to talk about and share feelings and cultivate relationships and friendships. But as a society, we also have to make sure that men don't feel redundant and don't feel as if there's not a place for them. Yeah. And there are entire communities now where the women are more likely to be employed than the men are. And they have more avenues for supporting their families. Yeah. And that is something that no matter how much talk you engage in, if guys are feeling left out and not respected, then they're going to act some kind of way, and they're also going to pass that on to their sons. And we're making huge generalizations because in every community there are going to be exceptions. Yeah.
But before we close this out, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, the person who embodies hope, what is it? What do you see as going right for young people? What are you optimistic about this future generation?
I do think that when we look at Malia and Sasha's generation, Avery's generation, we don't yet know what things are going to be like for Austin and Aaron, because they're still on the come up. But I do think this idea of men, there are many different ways of being a good, strong, successful, happy man. I think that's something that young people are more open to and recognize. And so that's promising. And we see it, when we talk to Millie and Sasha and their friends. I think that what we need to do in order to take advantage of that is to, as a society, as communities, recognize that this kind of transition from the old models that you and I, Craig, grew up on. Just like you said, you took a lot of good stuff from your dad, but then there were some modifications that just had to be made, either because of blind spots, limits, lack of resource, what have you.
The times.
We joke that, talking to Millie and Sasha, sometimes they go out with their friends and, they're in a group and the guy's got crocodile arms, It's like...
Not picking up the check.
Not picking up the check. And it's like, okay, you don't have to pick it up all the time. But if you're never picking it up,
right,
that's a problem.
Says something about you.
If you're never opening a door or pulling out a chair, because that's just common courtesy. That's just being kind, right? So for those of you who do not have sons, so Emma, we are rooting for you, because those of us with daughters,
we need good men.
We've got to have good guys out there, not necessarily to get married, but to make sure that what we're learning, I think, is that when we don't think about boys and just assume they're going to be okay because they've been running the world and they've got all the advantages relative to the girls, and all of which has historically been true in all kinds of ways. But precisely because of that, if you're not thinking about what's happening to boys and how are they being raised, then that can actually hurt women. And I would argue that some of the broad political trends we've seen, not just in this country, but around the world, have to do with this sense of, boys, men not feeling as if they are seen, feeling as if they count. And that then makes them more interested in appeals by folks who say, you know what, the reason you don't feel respected is because women have been doing this, or this group has been doing this, or that group's been doing this, and that is not that's not a healthy place to be. And I will say, as quote unquote progressives, Democrats, progressive parents, enlightened ones, we've made that mistake sometimes in terms of our rhetoric, where it's like we're constantly talking about what's wrong with the boys instead of what's right with them. We rightly have tried to invest in girls to make sure that there's a level playing field, and then they're not barred from opportunities. But we haven't been as willing, I think, to be intentional about investing in the boys, and that's been a mistake. And I think people are starting to recognize that. So going back to your optimism, I think there's a healthier conversation taking place now, both among this new generation of young women and men, but also among the public at large, that's starting to see like, hey, we got to do better by our boys. And if we do better by our boys and we're producing stronger, more confident men, that's going to be good for our girls and our women as well.
Well, thank you, Barack Obama.
So my second take on raising emotionally intelligent, emotionally mature, emotionally resilient boys, young men, and men and also women, because in our communities, especially in our communities, we don't heal trauma, we don't go to therapy, we don't embrace therapy for ourselves, let alone for the children. Because if you're dysregulated, if you've gone through trauma, poverty, navigating separation, divorce, cheating, scandals, losses, grief, we don't take a moment to sit with ourselves and with our children to heal or heal in a therapy room. We wait till things are bad before we seek help. Preventatively, it's so important to take those boys to therapy ahead of any type of transitioning that might be happening in the home. Even to having step parent becoming part of the family, because that alone can cause a level of anxiety for children. We think, oh, we just brought a whole new woman, a whole new father in the home. Based on the child's temperament, a lot of children are resilient emotionally, and sometimes children going through transitions and difficulties in life with support, consistent support and love, they're able to build that buffer of resilience, that grit. So difficulties in life is good for children to some level of tolerance of that child's temperament. But super important, if you notice your child struggling, there's drastic change in their behavior patterns, and also knowing that any type of change like that can impact their mood in the long term and their perspective. Good to have some few sessions for a while, even if it's just for 3 months, 6 months, for them to have the support, that perspective from someone that's outside you as a mother or whatever, your primary caregiver. I digress also to touch on how important it is when Barack Obama said he took his time because his father was absent. He only saw his father once. His father passed away from a car accident in Kenya because he just up and left his mom and moved to Kenya, and he got into a car accident at the age of 46 and passed away. Talk about karma, but that's besides the point. But he learned how to be and recognize that in society, setting teachings that are being taught to boys and men were toxic. So he taught himself how to be a more emotionally intelligent father and present father. And he was doing the night shift when the babies were born, so Michelle can sleep from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. and then she takes over. Yes, Michelle's mom came in to help as well, but helped during the day because they both had busy schedules. But you see that? Do as you hear that, the intentionality. So some of these men will say, oh, the whole president, he was a senator for many, many years. He was a lawyer for many, many years before becoming a senator. So it's a choice. When a man chooses to ignore you when you know you're struggling, maybe they can offer their own help, allowing you to have help, allowing you to have maybe your mother to come and help rather than his mother. Maybe you and his mother, your mother-in-laws don't gel like that. But a lot of these men do that. They don't care about you at the core. And when you recognize that, that's what I'd say all the time. When you recognize the pattern of that man, run, because it's not every man that does this. There are men who are well accomplished, like in this case of Barack Obama, lawyer, and then he became a son. He's from a single parent household. Even his mother was not that present. She married somebody else in Indonesia and was having him go on the airplane by himself at the age of 10 or 11. All type of chaos. His grandparents were his anchor. So having a stable, consistent caregiver in your life as a child also helps you grow and have that buffer of resilience emotionally. But he learned on his own. He knew what his dad did was wrong. He wanted to do it different, but it was intentional, actionable steps that he took to be there for his children, for his daughters, to be there for his wife, so his wife can have the sanity of mind, giving her that grace, intentionally accepting date nights, even though Michelle was the one who planned it. So I'm to say that I was so hooked on that podcast, that YouTube session. I listen to it over and over, and I say, I want that type of consistent love in my life too. At the next turnaround, when you've gone through a separation and a divorce, it makes you sit. It makes you look as like, are there men out there who are open and willing to do that with a woman who's open and willing to build legacy, not a man who's determined to tear you down at every single turn, to make you feel bad about yourself, to question your sanity, to make you crazy, to make you lose your purpose, to make you lose yourself, to make your children lose their purpose. That is dark psychology. That's dark energy. That's somebody who's just up to no good, and you need to set those boundaries and set it strong and recognize what it is, put a verbiage for what it is, and move on and move your life forward, because there are such solid good men out there. And I tell you, someone who has been married for over a decade and now been on this dating street, met great men, solid great men. But until you're willing to do it freaking afraid, to being afraid and doing it freaking afraid, you will not give yourself that chance to smile again, to be loved again, to have joy again, to have beauty again, to inner beauty, inner rest. No, your nervous system getting dysregulated all the time. Healing is a process, but you need a partner that will not constantly bring out the worst version of yourself. It's constant chasing, it's constant you trying to make the relationship work. But there are great men out there who are able and willing to go down the trenches with you and your children and to build from there up. So listen to this, continue to support this type of conversations, and let's make a difference in our children, our boys' lives, for the future and for the next generation. Okay, love you so much. Bye. Leave me a comment, subscribe, give me a like, and let's do more of this. Bye.